This second video today, we are going to look at some other trigonometric functions. Well, it says here, there are 6 trigonometric functions. Sine, cosine, and tangent, we know. Cosecant, secant, and cotangent, these ones are all new. Cosecant is abbreviated CSC. Secant is abbreviated SEC. And cotangent is abbreviated COT. Our other trig functions, just as a good reminder, even though you just hopefully saw that in the last video how these were abbreviated. Sine is SIN, cosine is COS, and tangent's TAN. Okay, now what are cosecant, secant, and cotangent? Well, we know sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. These last 3, cosecant, secant, and cotangent, are the reciprocal trig functions. And reciprocal meaning, if you think of a fraction, it's flipped. The reciprocal 2 is 1/2. Okay, so each of these functions, cosecant, secant, and cotangent, is paired with either sine, cosine, or tangent. And that determines, or that helps us figure out what each one represents. So as long as you remember SOHCAHTOA and how each of these are paired, you're in good shape. So cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. I'm going to rewrite my SOHCAHTOA down here just so I have a little bit more space. Cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. So in other words, the cosecant of an angle is 1 over sine. And if I know that sine is opposite over hypotenuse, if I took the reciprocal of that instead of opposite over hypotenuse, that means cosecant is the hypotenuse over the opposite. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. Secant is paired with it. Secant is the reciprocal of cosine. So secant is 1 over cosine. And if cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, that means secant is hypotenuse over adjacent. And then lastly, cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent. That one's a little bit easier to remember just because they sound so much alike. Cotangent is 1 over tangent. And tangent's opposite over adjacent, so cotangent is the adjacent over the opposite. Now, you could try to memorize cosecant is hypotenuse over opposite. Chances are you're not going to remember it. You just flat out memorize. Really, what you want to think instead, think SOHCAHTOA and remember that sine and cosecant are paired together. Cosine and secant are paired. Tangent and cotangent are paired. One of the ways that you can remember it is that every pair has one function that starts with a sine and cosecant, cosine and secant, and then tangent and cotangent. Each pair has one so like cosine and cosecant can't go together because each pair only has one But that's probably the best way to remember how they are paired together.